300 years earlier, a towering phenomenon known as Heaven's Will had manifested in the sky. A spiraling violet rift flared above the skyline and poured raw, luminous energy downward. Its light carved the night and scattered motes of star-like dust across the air. From that breach, many secret realms and dungeons descended onto Earth, their presence transforming the atmosphere and casting the metropolis into an uncanny twilight. The camera pulled back to show high-rise rooftops and a skeletal crane in the foreground, steel silhouettes cutting through the glow, while the urban canyons below shimmered with reflected otherworldly hues. The city remained beneath the rift's afterglow, a hushed stage for the lingering consequences of that celestial incursion. After the celestial breach of Heaven's Will had cleaved the sky, a cascade of horrors spilled down into the world. Colossal, plated titans cast in blue-white light strode forward, while snarling, smaller fiends and a marching phalanx of red-eyed, helmed warriors swarmed the ruined ground. The image lingered on the unbearable scale of the assault, a spiraling glow behind the largest figure, jagged armor catching the rift's radiance, and countless hostile visages cutting through the gloom, and made clear that mankind stood teetering on extinction. The celestial breach of Heaven's Will had already split the sky and sent armored titans and ravenous fiends pouring into the world, and the awakened had risen amid that chaos. In this sequence, the focus shifted to the job changers, presented as a compact, radiating phalanx, a shadowed swordsman at the forefront, two robed figures flanking him, and a taller, enigmatic figure hovering above with arcane light and a floating grimoire. Their presence read like a counterweight to the rift, light pooling around weapons and spellcraft. The scene then cut to a devastated urban canyon, where a heavily armored knight and a robed caster stood on shattered concrete, surveying the husks of defeated monsters as shafts of sunlight found the battered streets. A caption made the consequence explicit. The job changers possessed mighty power that had aided in defeating those monsters and saved the world from its near destruction, leaving the ruined city as testament to both catastrophe and hard-won deliverance. After the world had been scarred by the celestial breach, nations pushed into secret realms to harvest wealth and forge new defenders, ensuring every youth might awaken by 18. In a soaring ceremonial hall, crystal light marked the formal roll call. Names were called and fates revealed. Some were declared failed, others hailed as swordsmen or crafters. A caption explained how the awakened were sorted into three classes: combat, support, and creation, and how combat remained the most coveted path, while creation and the weakest supports were scorned. Close-ups cut to personal reactions. One student's face lit with triumph at becoming a magic swordsman, while another recoiled in despair after awakening into a healing class he feared would leave him powerless in battle. The scene framed education and ceremony as both hope and harsh social sorting in the wary post-breach world. The ceremonial hall had already been framed as both rite and social crucible, where class ranks were announced into four strata: common, rare, secret, and the near-mythic divine, and listeners measured their fates against those labels. Midway through the proceedings, attention snapped to a single student as a sudden luminous sign gathered at his feet. Spectators recognized him as the top pupil and surged forward, shouting that an awakening had begun. Brilliant blue strands of light spiraled upward, coalescing into a towering, crystalline presence around the student, and whispers spread that this might be a divine-ranked class, an event so uncommon that veterans reminded one another Jiang City had produced no divine talent in hundreds of years. The crowd's excitement shifted to anxious awe as elders and peers contemplated the implications. The panel closed on the old warning that whenever a divine-ranked class awoke, something far larger was set in motion. A vast, tree-shaped luminescence towered over the skyline, its braided light stretching from the streets up into the heavens as the city looked small beneath it. A caption warned that such a phenomenon could shake the whole heaven and earth. Below, the camera cut to the floor of the hall, where a young man stood beside a newly formed crystal, palms in his pockets and relief softening his features as he murmured that the awakening had succeeded. The towering apparition and the quiet, human reaction were presented as two sides of the same event: cosmic consequence and immediate result, and the scene held the implication that whatever had been drawn out of that student now reached far beyond the ceremony. Observers could feel awe at the scale and an undercurrent of something larger being set into motion, tying the personal triumph to a city-altering occurrence. Faculty clustered around the newly awakened student and lauded him as the school's pillar, voices swelling with pride as one official proclaimed he had expected a combat awakening and could not believe the result reached divine rank. The student listened with a composed expression, and when Principal Wang pressed him for the exact class, the youth answered casually that he had not awakened as a combat class. The shift from triumph to confusion was instantaneous. Principal Wang's face tightened in disbelief as he blurted a shocked question: was the student a support class? The exchange played out as a quiet, charged confrontation between institutional expectation and the student's unexpected truth, the smile on the youth's face meeting the principal's stunned reaction and leaving the hall suspended between admiration and bewilderment. The crowd that had gathered around the newly awakened youth had been quick to heap praise on him, expecting a combat class savior. Instead, Wang Hao answered Principal Wang's probing with a quiet, unsettling truth. He stepped forward as green, plant-like energies wrapped his hands and declared his awakening, the creation class at divine rank, a spiritual master whose talent lay in nurturing plant life and small creatures rather than in battle. The hall's atmosphere snapped from admiration to outrage. One senior official barked that a creation class lacked combat value and that even a divine rank was useless in war. Another administrator intervened, cooling the room by noting spiritual masters, utility in research and warning that the recommendation they had promised could no longer be fulfilled, though a research placement might produce a substitute letter. Wang Hao listened without defensiveness, and with a small, composed nod, said he would consider the proposal, leaving the assembly split between disappointment and reluctant pragmatism. After the assembly fractured over Wang Hao's unexpected creation class, divine awakening, and the administrator's debated placement, he stepped forward with composed brevity, excused himself, and began to leave the hall. As he departed, clusters of students traded bitter jokes and cutting observations, deriding a creation class as useless in combat and scoffing that even a divine grade could not save him from scorn. Their laughter cut against the memory of Principal Wang's attempts to salvage a research placement. Nearby peers contrasted the mockery with open admiration for Jiang Chen's stellar reputation, and a whisper circulated about Lin, the school beauty, having awakened to a secret combat class, which only intensified the crowd's envy and bitterness. The scene closed on a split room, one side gleeful at the fall of expectations, the other quietly proud of established stars, while Wang Hao's calm silhouette receded from the courtyard under the same cold light that had exposed their ambitions. After stepping away from the courtyard's divided whispers, Wang Hao let a small, sardonic smile cross his face as he replayed how Brother Jiang and Brother Chang had treated him, cruel reminders that only strength was honored in their world. He doubted the value others ascribed to a creation class and outwardly questioned their scorn, but privately a different power stirred. With a casual motion, he conjured a translucent notification. The system acknowledged that he had completed an awakening and declared his new status as a spiritual master of divine rank. The message then revealed a darker turn. The conditions to open the insect natural calamity system had been met, the initial mother insect had been unlocked, and the choice of where to summon her lay before him. The ritual prompt hung in the air like a promise and a threat, leaving Wang Hao alone, with an option that could shift the balance the assembly thought they understood. Wang Hao's private moment with a system prompt lingered like a shadow over the assembly, his earlier smirk and the unsettling option he had been offered still hanging in the air. The focus then shifted to another figure bathed in violet light, Jiang Chen, who introduced himself and quietly revealed that he had been reincarnated into this world of the awakened. He recounted how, after the end of the Dark Era, dungeons and monsters had come to define the landscape, thrusting survivors into constant contest. From that day forward, society bent toward power and those who wielded it. The final panels rendered him small against looming silhouettes of beasts and the broken world they inhabited, a calm, observing presence that underscored how brutality and strength had reordered fate and respect in this new age. After the assembly's revelations, Jiang Chen's recollection drifted back to the solitary years that had shaped him. He had been reborn as an orphan and, to endure, had poured himself into discipline, pounding a heavy bag until his arms ached and spending nights bent over books in a quiet library, believing by 18 that only his own effort could secure a future. That conviction had defined him until, a month prior, a translucent system interface manifested and announced itself with a message he had not expected. He stared at the glowing panel in equal parts disbelief and cold assessment, sensing that this strange prompt might alter the narrow rules he had lived by. In that stunned moment, the steady arc of his self-reliance met an impossible new mechanism, marking the hinge between who he had been and the uncertain path opening before him. After his private recollection of solitary years and the strange system's first appearance, Jiang Chen reviewed the older, harsher history that justified relentless self-reliance. He noted the insect race's terrifying power and the cataclysm when 9 of the 12 human kings were said to have been sacrificed to seal a calamity. The page flashed to a battlefield of colossal insect monstrosities and fallen champions, then back to a terse axiom: in that world, strength determined survival, which tightened around him like a vow. A clenched fist showed a quiet, hardening resolve, and Jiang Chen's gaze hardened into cold light. He welcomed the instrument that could turn that resolve into force. The panel ended as he accepted the mechanism outright, a single, triumphant command: yes. Open system, closing the beat with the unmistakable shift from thought to powered intent. After recalling the old, brutal history that had shaped his resolve and willingly accepting the strange mechanism, Jiang Chen was drawn inward into a boundless inner realm. He floated over a spiraling ocean of consciousness, a lone figure suspended above rolling depths as starlight speckled the surface. Touching his temple, he acknowledged the place as his own mind made visible. The vast, dark calm broke open in a wash of radiant light as a colossal, shimmering tree rose from the waters, its roots and branches luminous and otherworldly. Surprised, he murmured that his talent had taken the form of a tree, and he stood beneath that living emblem, small, reflective, and newly charged by possibility. The vision closed on that quiet awe. The system's gift was not brute force, but a living, expanding power that recast his private vow to become strength into a promise of growth. After accepting the mechanism and witnessing his talent manifest as a luminous tree within his inner realm, Jiang Chen watched as the system unfolded a series of translucent panels that explained his class talent in clinical detail. The readouts outlined that the evolution of all things demanded sacrifice to progress, could be applied only once per target and only once every 10 days, and that sacrificial actions could advance a fruit, occasionally yielding special produce. Another panel promised a temporary acceleration to growth rates for living beings, noting a 10% boost and an 8-hour cooldown. Jiang Chen considered the implications, noting that although his outward combat options seemed limited, each mechanic could likely be leveraged through his insect system. The interface completed its diagnostics and asked whether to summon the mother insect. With composed resolve, he answered the prompt aloud, commanding the system to summon, a decisive act that closed the test and pivoted him toward the next stage of his power. After he accepted the mechanism and authorized the call, the system immediately announced that the mother insect had been summoned, and an otherworldly purple miasma erupted around him. Tendrils of shadow and shimmering motes spiraled upward as Jiang Chen stood at the center of that storm, his silhouette outlined by the emergent energy. The presence pressed at the air and the ground, filling the chamber with oppressive power. He felt the weight of the creature's essence wash over him, and a single thought crystallized in his mind: such a powerful aura, before the interface delivered its formal confirmation. A final system message declared the summoning successful and revealed the creature's rank and name: the natural calamity rank Mother Insect, 9 miasma wing. The proclamation left no doubt that the entity he had called forth was neither minor nor benign, and the room held its breath around Jiang Chen as the ramifications of that revelation settled in. Jiang Chen finalized the ritual, and the system confirmed the summoning. An otherworldly purple miasma coalesced, and a titanic insectal silhouette unfolded into the chamber. Shadows and shimmering motes braided around colossal wings, and the display panel declared the entity a natural calamity rank, the mother insect, 9 miasma wing, born of catastrophe and the old dark era. The beast's bulk dominated the frame, while Jiang Chen's figure remained small at its feet. He flinched at the creature's size and the way the air itself seemed to bend. Text from the interface listed lineage and abilities even as the creature murmured in a voice that threaded hunger and devotion, calls of master and pleas for sustenance that named him Little One. The room held a brittle calm after that recognition, the system's facts and the creature's possessive murmurs settling together into a charged, ominous silence around Jiang Chen. After the summoning's aftermath, the interface flickered with new statistics and announced a raised growth rate and that the first upgrade need not consume any sacrifice. Jiang Chen, relieved and eager, urged that they proceed at once. Those hopes were checked when the system clarified that the mother insect's further advancement would require devouring, a grim, predatory condition that made the creature uniquely dangerous to evolve. In response, the chamber filled with a swollen, emerald light as devouring miasma gathered and unfurled into towering waves of energy. The luminous torrent dwarfed Jiang Chen, who remained a solitary silhouette on the reflective floor as the upgrade's force rolled toward him. The room tasted of inevitability. System facts, the insect's hunger implied before, and the visible surge of devouring power combined into a tense stillness as Jiang Chen steadied himself to attempt the hazardous transformation. Jiang Chen flared with alarm as a piercing aura cut through the charged air. His terse exclamation marked the moment the scene focused on a pair of burning violet eyes. The panel held on that stare as purple motes and smoky energy congealed, and the ambient light went cold. Then a silhouette sharpened into a lithe, shadow-armored woman whose eyes glowed with predatory light. She stood framed by roiling, amethyst-devouring energy, and thin, crescent blades of the same hue circled and extended from her form, announcing a fully realized manifestation of the encroaching power. Jiang Chen tightened his posture against the sudden presence, the page collapsing the previously described system facts and devouring surge into a single, personal threat. The upgrade's force had taken on a sentient, hostile shape that now faced him directly, the chamber trembling between transformation and confrontation. Jiang Chen watched the charged air coalesce into a living threat as a sleek, shadow-armored figure resolved above him, amethyst blades rotating like predatory petals. A translucent system panel hovered near the apparition, confirming the emergence. The new form's motes and smoky energy made the room feel colder and more dangerous. Jiang Chen's face widened with disbelief, and he murmured unsettled, when a distant voice shouted that Little Nine evolved. The name hung in the air while the evolving entity translated that declaration into motion. Tendrils of dark energy braided around its limbs and surged downward in a flash, encircling Jiang Chen's body and pulling close with intimate, hostile intent. The encounter collapsed the abstract mechanics of the upgrade into an immediate personal threat. The evolved Little Nine now manifested as a sentient weapon against the man called Master, and the chamber quivered between revelation and combat. Jiang Chen's disbelief hardened into stunned attention as the evolved construct took shape before him. Motes of smoky energy coalesced, and the new form's amethyst blades and tendrils still hummed with latent threat. A translucent system panel manifested beside the apparition, proclaiming the title 9 miasma wing, enlisting skills and a devouring capacity that made the air feel colder and more dangerous. Rather than lashing out immediately, the entity softened into a deceptively coy posture as Jiang Chen reached out and rested his hand atop its head. The contact framed the being as both companion and weapon. It addressed him as master with a brightly mischievous voice, confessing a literal hunger to devour flesh and blood that undercut its smile with menace. The moment braided intimacy and peril. The upgrade had become sentient, affectionate, and openly hungry, leaving the chamber suspended between revelation, dread, and a fragile calm before violence. Jiang Chen absorbed the translucent system readout as it detailed how a spiritual master's talent accelerated the devouring growth of the mother insect and converted those gains into experience and stat boosts. The panel even noted a sizable percentage increase to his attributes. He allowed a satisfied smile to cross his face, amused that the upgrade and his awakened path complemented one another so cleanly, and muttered that his class made a perfect match for the system. The scene then shifted as the chamber filled with roiling miasma and flurries of insectal matter. Jiang Chen extended his hands and watched the air condense into writhing, hungry forms. He tested the mechanism in his mind. Every slain monster, every rapid devouring would feed the construct's growth, and by extension, swell the ranks of insect minions he could command. What had begun as a dangerous, affectionate upgrade resolved into a pragmatic plan, a sentient, predatory ally whose appetite could be purposefully fed to build an army. Jiang Chen read the system-style warning about insect, abyss, and world catastrophe, and understood that anyone who knew the whole truth could end him. He decided the danger of discovery left him no choice but to hide the true source of his power. He resolved to adopt the outward identity of a creation class awakened, and to use the mother insect's poison miasma as a plausible, private cover, letting devoured monsters feed his construct's growth while appearing to the world as a normal crafter. Though secrecy suited necessity, he nevertheless vowed to grow strong enough to one day display his abilities openly, refusing permanent concealment. A compact insectal presence stood nearby as silent proof of the plan's mechanics, and Jiang Chen's deliberate step onto the dark, reflective surface signaled the first committed move from thought to action as he set his hidden campaign in motion. Jiang Chen stepped onto the dark, glassy surface and found himself face to face with the compact being he had been nurturing. Little Nine had fully manifested as a lithe, insectal humanoid. He glanced down and murmured, barely audible, "A stunned this is," while shards of light swirled around them and the creature's pupils flared with a pinkish glow that cut through the gloom. Little Nine's internal voice, a scraped black thought that addressed her master, confirmed recognition, then shifted into active perception as she announced that Little Nine is sensing. Her tone was coldly precise, her posture coiled like a weapon ready to spring. The moment tied the theoretical mechanics of his concealment plan to reality. The quiet construct had become a responsive, aware entity that could both serve and guard the secret Jiang Chen intended to hide. The atmosphere tightened with implication. The bond's activation hinted at power now waking beneath restraint. A distorted, smiling visage broke the dark and declared, in a jittering whisper, that there was a threat. The declaration hung like static in the air and carried with it a cold, predatory amusement. The scene snapped to a close-up of wide, shocked eyes as the warning landed on Jiang Chen. He registered the omen with immediate, visible alarm. The tension then fractured outward. Bright daylight and towering colonnades replaced the shadowed void, and Jiang Chen found himself face-to-face with a tall, bearded man whose presence filled the frame. The pair stood beneath the stone arcades, the older figure looming and unreadable, while the earlier voice's implication of danger lingered between them. The page closed on that uneasy meeting, the intimate dread of the whispered threat mirrored in the charged, public confrontation beneath the pillars. The confrontation sharpened. The tall, bearded unknown man stepped closer and fixed Jiang Chen with a hard question, asking if the citywide phenomenon had come from him. Jiang Chen's face tightened as the accusation landed. A bead of sweat ran down his cheek while he struggled to answer beneath the bright daylight of the plaza. Inwardly, he judged his interlocutor's strength, recognizing that this man was at least master level or above, and that knowledge unsettled him even further. The atmosphere between them grew taut and public, every nuance of expression magnified. Jiang Chen's unease, the older man's unreadable scrutiny, and the echo of the earlier ominous whisper that had warned of a threat. The exchange closed without resolution, leaving Jiang Chen to reel from both the charge and the unnerving implication that someone with considerable power had come looking for him specifically. After the earlier public confrontation left Jiang Chen rattled, the plaza seemed to contract around the two figures now facing one another. Crowds gathered at the edges, sensing an overwhelming aura from the tall, bearded unknown man and trading urgent guesses about his level and intent. Some whispered that he had come for Jiang Chen and wondered if a larger conflict was about to erupt. From the center of the square, the older man radiated a quiet, pervasive pressure that prickled across the onlooker's skin, yet remained wordless. Jiang Chen felt that force pressing on him continuously, sharper than mere presence, an assessing weight that forced him to measure strength against strength. He watched the man closely, unsettled by how much power the stranger masked beneath silence, and suspected the implication was more dangerous than a simple accusation. The plaza's murmurs swelled as both men held their stances, the scene ending on taut uncertainty rather than resolution. Jiang Chen bristled under the silent pressure of the stranger and thought, "He's testing me," when Little Nine's voice slipped into his awareness with a single hungry word, "Master." The manifested entity circled the possibility in dark amusement, declaring that the man before them posed a real threat to Jiang Chen and, disturbingly, tempted the instinct to devour. As Little Nine's intent crept outward, a cascade of Crimson System alerts appeared, each one naming the same conclusion. The mother insect sensed the target as dangerous, that he offered high devouring value, and that it was about to begin devouring the target. The implication of being chosen by that ancient hunger hit Jiang Chen hard. His wide-eyed reaction and blunt, "not good," cut through the hush of the plaza, turning the standoff into a suddenly urgent race against an approaching predator. Little Nine's sensing rippled outward first, its hostility coalescing into a palpable violet pressure that bent the rain and air around them. The manifested entity assessed the lone man as a direct threat and readied an aggressive maneuver, and almost instantly the group's comms were flooded with Crimson System warnings. The mother insect had noticed this target, judged him to have extreme devouring value, and was beginning the devouring sequence. Jiang Chen's alarm flared, and he cut through the stunned silence with a sharp warning as the students around him stiffened and recoiled. A cold, ominous aura swept through the plaza, forcing the awakened to scramble for distance and brace for impact, while the stranger remained at the epicenter of the threat. The scene tightened into a tense standoff, hunter and hunted, converging within the glow of Little Nine's intent and the looming appetite of an ancient calamity. The stranger's violet aura sharpened into a grin as he explained that a low devouring value made the mother insect lash out, and that he planned to locate monsters for Little Nine to devour. He admitted his test of strength had unintentionally drawn the ancient calamity's attention, but an on-screen system confirmation then informed them he had temporarily suppressed the mother insect and reduced its devouring value to 0. Standing calm amid the dissipating menace, the stranger declared he could still hold the threat at bay and turned his praise to the young man at the plaza's center, commending the newcomer's awakening and resilience under pressure. His words elevated the student's status, worthy of a divine rank awakened, and the surrounding crowd, already tense from the earlier confrontation, shifted into awed murmurs as the immediate danger ebbed and the significance of the youth's awakening settled over them. After briefly holding the ancient threat at bay and receiving the crowd's wary relief, the bearded stranger turned from suppression to revelation. He introduced himself as Jai Gang, the leader of the Night Watch, and extended a direct offer to the young awakened student at the plaza's center. The student's stunned reaction cut through the murmurs as people registered the name and the weight of the invitation. Jai Gang's declaration reframed the moment. What had been a single act of defense now became an audition for an organization that existed to investigate and eliminate beast tides and newly opened secret realms. Silhouetted images and terse exposition underscored the Night Watch's role on the front lines, where casualties were high and members were first responders to emergent dungeons and demon tides. The plaza's atmosphere shifted from immediate danger to a charged reckoning. The student's awakening marked him as a candidate for a perilous duty few survived long enough to accept. A dark, purple-lit host of beasts pressed forward as a towering insect figure spoke with hungry clarity. The mother insect required the flesh and blood of monsters to accumulate devouring value and reproduce offspring, and she was actively seeking opportunities to face large foes. Her proclamation that raising devouring value would trigger further moves by the mother insect hung in the air while jagged maws and armored silhouettes framed her words. The tableau then cut to the young awakened student in the plaza, who listened, weighed the revealed mechanics and opportunities, and thought through the practical benefits of aligning with a group that confronted monster tides. He considered how the Night Watch's access to encounters and resources fit his aims, extended his hand, and silently concluded that from this point of view, the organization was extremely suitable. The moment closed with predatory intent and calculated resolve braided together, the threat and the offer defining the next step. Jai Gang stepped forward and addressed the student and gathered silhouettes, insisting that rumors about the Night Watch were outdated and that the organization had the martial history and resources to train rising defenders. He promised comprehensive instruction and access to divine rank materials for any willing recruit, presenting the Night Watch as the logical path for someone seeking steady encounters and support. The young awakened student listened, then extended his hand. The two men clasped palms in a firm handshake as the student declared his willingness to join and vowed that their generation would not shirk its duty in reforge the Night Watch's glory. Jai Gang's surprise registered briefly beneath the open sky, the formal pledge cutting through the plaza's hush. Even as the recruitment closed, an ominous voice, echoing the earlier insect warnings, stated, "My insect offspring will rely on you all," leaving resolve braided with foreboding. After Jai Gang had stepped forward and presented the Night Watch as the logical path for rising defenders, the exchange that followed turned from solemn to strained. Jai Gang's face registered raw disbelief when the man before him reacted with incredulity, and the young awakened student, while affirming that the recruitment was not a joke, explained he already had matters to attend to and could not stay. A tiny, pet-like little nine fussed at his side, its childish hunger and blunt demands for food undercutting the gravity of the moment and forcing the student to hurry. He nonetheless promised to honor his pledge. He would report at the Night Watch headquarters in 3 days. Jai Gang, still processing the abrupt conditional consent, watched the departure with a mix of surprise and concern. The earlier warning about insect forces lingered in the air, turning determination into a brittle resolve as they all prepared for the trials ahead. The meeting's brittle resolve briefly loosened as the tall, bearded man allowed himself a rueful smile, remarking that the recruitment had gone far more smoothly than expected and wondering, aloud about the mysterious profession the young awakened had concealed. His curiosity was cut short when an authoritative elder strode in, and voices quickly rose. The elder accused the Night Watch of poaching and demanded to know the whereabouts of a particular candidate, referring to him as a possible divine rank creation. Jai Gang found himself pressed from both sides as the elder warned against letting such a high-tier creation class awaken join and risk certain death under the Night Watch's banner. Tension climbed as they each sought clarity. Was the youth they'd just encountered truly a divine rank creation? Little Nine's earlier fussing and the student's conditional promise to report in 3 days hung between them, turning the exchange into a charged standoff over duty, protection, and the value of one fighter's life. The fragile meeting's friction broke as a spiraling azure portal tore open over the main city, drawing shocked exclamations about a possible divine rank creation. A tense exchange followed when one witness demanded to know who had caused the phenomenon. The youth only answered with a quiet yes, and the implication hung heavy in the air. Moments later on the street, students clustered around an older man, called Uncle Wang, as a purple-haired classmate scolded him for speaking too loudly and drew teasing jibes about his running mouth. Xiao Chen appeared calm and smiled, assuring them it was nothing shameful, and the group shifted from outrage to practical curiosity when someone pointed out that, although the creation category couldn't fight, companies that cultivated spiritual plants still sought creation talents. The earlier debate over whether such a high-tier creation should be risked under the Night Watch's banner lingered beneath their banter, leaving duty and protection unresolved. After the earlier argument over the portal and the duty to protect such a creation, the students had gathered around Uncle Wang as he spoke in good humor and urged them not to worry. He offered timely help, an invitation to a beginner-level secret realm run where they could gain equipment and level together, and the students accepted with thanks. Almost at once, a system notification confirmed that the team formation was complete, and a spiraling blue gate opened before them. Drawn through the light, Xiao Chen and the others felt the shift as they entered the secret realm. the scene cut to a cavernous, cathedral-like interior where the scale of the place became apparent. The group stood beneath the soaring architecture, exchanging a brief, uncertain question about the realm's interior while the portal's afterglow flickered. Duty and opportunity sat side by side as they prepared to advance together into the unknown. After they had stepped through the portal into the vaulted interior, the system announced that secret realm matching was complete and a C-rank dungeon, the Temple of the Undead, had opened before them. Blue, spectral light pooled in the mouths and eyes of colossal skull-like statues that loomed over the chamber, and the system's tooltip described the temple's loot, equipment drops, and the experience calculation tied to completion. From the shadows, ranks of undead soldiers became visible, their forms echoing the chilling glow of the sculptures. The assembled students exchanged shocked, uneasy glances. Uncle Wang's face tightened as he and Zio Chen realized this was no simple beginner run. Voices rose in alarm and frustrated disbelief at why the system had matched them to such a dangerous rank, and the group gathered their resolve, aware that duty and opportunity had just taken a far darker turn. Inside the vaulted chamber, Uncle Wang scanned the spectral surroundings and concluded aloud that the system must have compensated for Zio Chen's unusually high awakening by matching them to a higher-level secret realm. The purple-haired student cried out in alarm at the implication, insisting that Zio Chen belonged to the creation category and questioning how that squared with a divine rank influence. Another student timidly proposed hesitation, asking if they should back out, but Uncle Wang dismissed the caution with a gruff, opportunistic grin. Secret realms of this caliber did not present themselves every day, he argued, and they might profit from Zio Chen's presence with valuable equipment drops. He then assumed a dramatic stance, sword drawn and crackling with light, making it clear he intended to press forward and test their luck rather than retreat from the danger. Pale blue fire lit cavernous faces as skeletal undead soldiers surged forward, their jaws snapping in frozen, luminous fury. Uncle Wang reacted without hesitation. He vaulted into the air, sword already crackling from his earlier flourish, and barked for Zio Chen to stand back, warning that these undead were more dangerous than ordinary C-rank monsters. He declared the group's intent to push toward the core of the dungeon first, using the advance as both shield and strategy, and drove his assault directly at a towering, armored revenant with the same merciless glow. The moment felt decisive and urgent, a calculated gamble born of opportunity and necessity, with Uncle Wang taking point to buy the others time and test whether the secret realm would yield its promised rewards amid the encircling menace. After pushing deeper into the dungeon amid the skeletal onslaught, Uncle Wang took a running plunge and slammed his blade into a towering undead, committing himself to a risky, frontline gambit to open a path for the group. As his strike landed, he barked a single, desperate order, "Zioxy, quickly enhance my talent," and the urgency in his voice cut through the roar of the fight. Zioxy responded without hesitation. She raised her hands, a clear, geometric glow forming at her chest as runic light coalesced into a sigil, and that luminous energy began to thread outward. The enhancement unfolded instantly, bathing them in a crackling aura that promised to amplify Uncle Wang's edge and buy precious seconds for the others to press toward the dungeon's core. After the group pushed deeper into the dungeon, Uncle Wang braced himself and called for aid. Zioxy's runic glow had already blossomed and threaded outward to coat him in a crackling aura. With that surge feeding his strength, he surged forward, his face a grim snarl, eyes flaring with spectral light, and swung his blade in sweeping, luminous arcs. Each cut left a burning trail that sheared through the undead ranks, bodies tumbling and armor splintering as waves of blue-white energy cleaved the darkness. The strike's momentum hurled enemies aside and opened a jagged corridor where none had been, buying the party a brief, violent opportunity to push toward the dungeon's core as Uncle Wang continued to press the assault under Zioxy's sustaining enhancement. From a high vantage, the young man observed the battered line of fighters and wondered whether Uncle Wang and the others truly fought each day merely to survive. He noted how Zioxy had always supported them and recalled that she had become an adventurer to save her brother's sight. Resolve hardened in him. He promised to get stronger quickly, and to repay their help once he could. A shadowed, tall figure watched from above as the young man turned inward and felt a darker presence stir at his side. Little Nine, a purple, predatory manifestation, spoke of the abundant monsters and blood and urged to devour them. Little Nine addressed him as master, and the young man, sensing how readily the entity had already keyed into the tide of enemies, decided that this was the moment to trial the entity's abilities. With the dungeon's carnage as a test bed, he steeled himself and prepared to unleash Little Nine against the encroaching hordes. He bowed his hand and gave the command. Little Nine slipped free from his palm like a shadowy predator, answering in a reverent whisper, "Thank you, Master." The ability label, Poison Barrier Level 1, Corrosion, flashed as the entity unfurled into a choking purple haze that poured over the battlefield. Wherever the mist touched the monsters, their forms blackened and dissolved, armor and flesh collapsing into gritty, violet dust. Whole corpses corroded the instant of contact. The young man hovered above the ruin and watched the feet of decay sweep the floor, the scent of rot and acid hanging in the air as Little Nine fed hungrily on the abundance of enemies. He registered the sheer potency of the poison mist, and having proven the entity's lethality in the dungeon's carnage, felt the cold satisfaction of a weapon that could clear tides of foes almost instantly. Master watched as Little Nine's poison barrier, Corrosion, had ravaged the battlefield, turning armored creatures into gritty purple dust, and then checked a floating status window that identified a prominent awakening and the monster's composition. A chill of practicality tempered his satisfaction. The enemies were too low-level, so growth and evolution would be slow unless Little Nine devoured more prey. He noted the area of effect nature of the poison and weighed the risk of collateral harm, deciding to shadow the entity and clear the corpses while waiting for further developments. As he moved among the shimmering ruin, Little Nine pulsed uneasily and warned him that it sensed something. Master turned and saw fresh blood and faint motion far ahead, the glint of new threats materializing beyond the littered corpses, transforming the quiet scene into a tense, watchful hush. Master's attention snapped to a new status overlay that unfurled above a skeletal hooded figure, a level 10 shadow lurker, whose strength, agility, defense, and stamina were listed like a hunting dossier. He watched the lurker's chilling visage and wondered if it truly lay in wait for weaker stragglers. The red title suggested it outranked him at a glance.